Hey folks, this is Mike Tango Whiskey coming at you with another video. This one is going to be a tutorial on how to make a paracord bracelet. So you'll see me wearing some version of this in most of my videos. I have a pretty long history of making these things, and today I'm going to teach you how. So I want to start by showing you what you need to make one of these, and we'll start with the paracord itself. So paracord you can get pretty readily pretty much anywhere, and what you'll need is one 2-foot piece, so folded in half. This is about 11-12 inches worth. You're going to need a second piece that is about 6 feet or so. So I am exactly average at 5'9", so I just spread my arms out and go fingertip to fingertip with a piece of paracord, and I use that as the length, and that will work for most people. I've never seen it not work for any wrist that I've made one of these for. So one 6-foot piece, one 2-foot piece. You will need a Bic lighter. You will need some small needle nose pliers, small wire cutters, some scissors. You could use a knife as well for that. And what I use are buttons. So these are the type of buttons you can get from, we used to get them from uniforms, from BDU uniforms. And if I remember correctly, each uniform would yield something like 12 or 14 of these. But I'm going to show you how to break out the center of these and use it as a clasp for the end of the paracord bracelet. You'll see a lot of them that they sell at Walmart or online. They use the little push clasps. Those are cool. I mean, they're more readily available. They're more convenient. They're easier to use and easier to make these, but they're not as cool. Okay, these are OG. This is the OG way to do it. This is the way that people used to do it back in the day. So, all right, so now you know what we're going to be doing. You know the tools that you need. Let's go ahead and get started. Move some of this stuff out of the way. Now, the way you want to start this, and before you start working with these two pieces, it's good to kind of burn the ends a little bit, because as you start to work with them, this will begin to fray and it'll get pretty messy pretty quick. So I just like to give it a little bit of a burn just to kind of keep it in place. You see, like that one's already burned, so it stays nice. This one is out of control. So let's trim this guy. We'll burn it just a little bit. By the way, the smell of burning paracord, it is the best smell on earth. We need colognes, we need candles, we need deodorants in this fragrance, and that person will be a billionaire in a day. Okay, so 2 pieces of paracord. We've got all our tools, all our supplies. So what you want to do is you want to start with this 2-foot piece, okay? You want to fold it exactly in half, pinch it. Then you take your 6-foot piece and you do the same thing. Normally I wouldn't use this kind of outlandish color, but I'll tell a story about how I used to make these for kids at Bible camp, and they love the crazy colors. Most of mine are going to be, you know, like olive drab or coyote. I like the earth tones. So you take your center piece here, fold it in half. You take your long piece and fold it in half, and you put the long piece behind the center, okay? And what you want to do is you want to take one end, make a loop in the front like this, pinch it in the front. This piece goes over that piece, behind both, and up through the hole. Pull that, not all the way tight, just mostly tight there. Now this is the part, so kind of cinch that down a little bit. This is where you want to draw that centerpiece down to leave your loop on the end. I like to leave about 1 inch of a loop. It's important though that you get this right, because if you don't, you can't really adjust it once you start braiding. It's too tight. So, and also you want to make sure and leave that loop long enough to where the button fits through. But I don't like it too long. This to me is kind of sloppy, a little bit lazy. So I like to leave about 1 inch long loop, but you don't want to go too short, because if this is too tight, it'll ruin it as well. So right about 1 inch. Once you get that length right, cinch that down nice and tight. This first knot is important because it serves as kind of a placeholder to keep this center from moving back and forth. So that one is a little bit tighter than the rest of these knots. Now what you see, 2 arms, 2 legs here, and you see a bump, okay? So what you want to do is on the bump side, you want to make another loop. So same process, loop in the front. This piece goes over that piece, behind both, and up through the hole. And then cinch it down, nice and tight. And what you'll notice is that bump now. So it was on the left, now it's on the right. So we'll use the same process, and that loop will alternate back and forth. So now our bump's on the right. So on that side, loop in the front, over that piece, behind both, and up through the hole. We'll cinch it down. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is consistency of tug. You want to make it nice and tight. A well-woven paracord bracelet will be stiff. It'll hold its form. You'll see a lot of them when people first start, they're not tightening it down, especially kids when they do them, and it ends up really floppy and kind of flaccid, and the weave can come loose over time. So you want it nice and tight. So tight cinch and the same cinch every time. So the more consistent you are with your cinching, the more consistent that braid will look, and it'll look nice and even all the way to the end. So that's what you want. So bump on the left, loop in the front, over that piece, behind both, and up through the hole. Okay, nice and tight. Now sometimes it helps to have a like a jig. So this will help you kind of pull. It helps when it's on the wall. I'll put like a hook on the wall, and I'm laying this flat for you, so it's easier for you all to see. But same process here. Loop in the front, over that piece, behind both, and up through the back. These are really cool. Depending on what colors you get, you can even do two pieces. Like this is the way I like it, and you'll see mine are a little bit fatter because I use two pieces of center. I use two centers to make them a little bit wider, just to customize it a little bit. But you can use all kinds of colors on these things, and people get very creative. Different color centers. You can burn two pieces together and have this colors alternating, so it's two different colors in the bracelet. Those are really cool. I got into this, man, it must have been way back in 2000. I was stationed in Kuwait. Me and a buddy of mine met a guy who was making them, and he was about to leave. He was about to go home. So he sold us his box of paracord. And then we started collecting buttons from the uniforms of people who were leaving. And we started making them and selling them. I was a fabricator back then, a body shop guy. And we didn't have a lot of work all the time, so we'd spend hours and hours weaving these things and making them. And we started selling them for $3 a piece or 2 for $5. And we made bank. We made so much money. It was really nice. It was great. What was happening is people would come and buy them from us. They'd buy 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 at a time because they were taking them home as souvenirs to relatives, and they'd hand them out to their moms or brothers, their whoever. And it was a cheap way to take home a souvenir, and it was something cool and something military. The story I heard of where they came from was, so this is paracord. It's short for parachute cord, and it's very similar. The commercial stuff now is not quite the same grade, but the military stuff, I believe, has 7 strands in the middle. And it's super useful because you can use the shell, and inside the guts on the inside of this can also be used for sewing, for building shelters, for fishing. So it's a very useful thing to have with you in a survival situation. So when pilots would get downed, what they would teach them in SEER schools, they would collect this stuff up. They would collect all this paracord because it was so useful, but they didn't want a big bundle of a bird's nest of material. So they found ways to start weaving it or braiding it into something that was more convenient to carry. I believe that this is called a cobra braid. I'm not positive about that. So that's kind of where it came from. I made them in Kuwait for all the months that I was over there. And then when I came back, a son of mine, my first son, was headed to Bible camp, and I started making them. I took some paracord with me and I made them for his cabin. And then the next year we came back and we started making them for all the campers that wanted them. After about 7 years of doing that, I was known as the bracelet guy at Bible camp. And we made, I think, 400 bracelets that year. So my family, we would buy like 7,000 feet worth of cord, and we would start these bracelets for the camp directors, and then we would sell them in kits. Not sell them, we would give them away in kits with starts for their campers, a pair of scissors, a lighter, and then we would teach the camp counselors how to do it, and then they would in turn teach the campers how to do it. So it was really cool, kind of a family tradition for a while. Now, this doesn't have to be very long. Interesting statistic, 90% of men have a 7-inch circumference on their wrist. You might have a few corn-fed, rock type guys that may have a bigger wrist, But for most people, these two lengths, the 2 feet here and the 6 foot here, are going to work just fine. Now, something about this though is you can shorten these, but you cannot lengthen them. So once you go too short, either here or here, the bracelet can be ruined. Well, it's ruined for most adults, but if you're making them for kids, it can be shorter. Some women have smaller wrists as well, but I always kind of use this as a standard length. It's right at about 7 inches, I believe. Let's see. So we're right at the end here. Let's check this guy. About 7 1/4. And this is the length that I'll do for the vast majority of my bracelets because it's going to work for most people. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to do one more for good measure again, because if you make it too long, again, you could shorten it, but you cannot make it longer once it's too short. So I'm going to add one more little weave to that. Now, in the same way that this first knot has to be a little bit tighter than the rest, is kind of a placeholder, I do the same thing for the last knot. So the last knot I'll kind of double cinch it down just to give it some closure there, and you see how it kind of tapers. So now we're left with these arms and these legs, and what are we going to do with that? So we are going to go ahead and cut these off. What I do is I leave about 1/4 inch of material. Dull scissors are okay here. All of my scissors are dull because my kids keep taking my sharp ones. And what I do is I flare it out. The more fluff, the better. And what we're going to do is when I set this on fire, I'm going to burn it, and I'm going to smash and roll it this direction and squish the liquid paracord down into that little crevice there. What that does is it helps hold it from pulling through. I've seen people be lazy at this last part and they come unwoven and they start to come apart. So it's important that this is nice and tight. Set this guy on fire. Sniff some of that amazing smell. Don't follow my advice. I'm sure it's really bad for you, but it's really delicious. Kind of roll it, smash and roll, smash and roll. See how that got down in that crack there? Same thing on the other side. Puff, puff, puff. You have to be careful too. If you get a drop of molten paracord on your skin, it'll burn you pretty bad. So it'll cook your skin and you just have to cry on the inside like a winner. Also, this is a good time to kind of heat the end. Sometimes you can end up with a sharp edge. So if you just heat it a little bit around the edges there, you can kind of smooth that out so it's not rough on the skin. Now, here comes the hard part. These are nice and burned, so I'm going to leave those for now. Now, we have to turn this into this. This is by far the most tedious part, but again, this is the OG way to do it. Don't be lazy and use a clasp, okay? This is the cool way. If you want to be part of the cool kids club, you have to use a button. So what I'll do is I will use my snips here and snip each of those little sections like that, all 4 of them on both sides. Now you got to be careful. You see how the open edge of these snips are facing my face? That will shoot directly into my eyeball if I let it. So I do recommend eye protection, or you can just use it this way. Okay, I live life on the edge, and I'm going to shoot it right towards my eyeballs. I just kind of close my eyes though. Smashes out the middle there. Nice and deep. I've even taken some sandpaper and like a little grinder and made these a little bit thinner to get down in there better. Now, some guys will stop there, but you can't, because if there's a sharp edge in here, that's going to cause a lot of problems for us as we try and push that paracord through there. So I'll take a pair of of pliers and kind of bite that sharp edge off there, just to take the edge off a little bit. The more time, the better you do this, the easier this last step is going to be, because this can be a real bear. Okay, kind of grind that out a little bit. There we go. Now, this is the difficult part. We have to get this through here. And if these aren't burned and they start to fray and smash, this can be a real pain. You could ruin the whole bracelet if you don't have enough length to work with. So what I do is I smash them and kind of pinch them together. I'll put them through, push and wiggle, push and wiggle, push and wiggle, and then I'll cheat. I'll use the pliers here. Oh, no, that's a disaster, because now I can't get that second guy through. They both have to go through at the same time. It's really difficult if you get one in to get the other one in beside it. So I'll put those down. Of course, I'm doing it on video, so this is going to be the hardest one I've ever done. Kind of pinch and pull, pinch and pull. And you got to be careful, because if you just get the guts and pull it through like I'm doing right here, it can be very difficult. See, that's the same problem there. Okay, I'm going to start over here. That's why you want to leave so much length here, in case you have trouble like this. You want to give yourself lots of room there to screw up. Okay. All right. That's nice and firm. Pinch and wiggle, pinch and wiggle, pinch and wiggle. Grab those guys. If you can grab an edge of both of them, that's perfect. That's ideal. Sometimes you can pinch and kind of, there we go, and just kind of rotate your pliers and kind of pull it up like that. Nice. There we go. Now, some guys make a mistake here, or some people make a mistake here, where I've seen them put the button all the way down at the bottom. What that'll do is when you're wearing the bracelet, it'll sit like this. So you don't want that. You want to leave at least a little bit, so as it begins to wear, it can flatten out a little bit and it won't be uncomfortable against the wrist. And again, if you leave more here, you can always make it shorter, but once you make it short, you cannot make it longer, okay? So I'll hold it here. I usually leave about an inch, about the same as the loop right there, so we're roughly equal. And then same procedure here. I will cut, leave about a 1/4 inch or so. This is where you want a lot of fray. The fatter this is, the better, okay? So lots of fraying there. And I'll set this on fire and let it just turn into a fireball. What you're gonna see me do is, as I smash, I'm gonna press against the button to flatten that out, to mushroom the head of this. Smash, and then I push, put pressure against it like that. And then it smushes it out like that. There we go. Nice and flat. And there we have a well done, a well made, nice and stiff, nice and even braid paracord bracelet. Now these are great. I've never actually used one of these in a survival situation. I usually will wear one as part of my EDC. I did get to use it once. I was driving on the road. I had a 92 Chevy van and the muffler came loose and started dragging on the street, like dragging down as I was driving down the street. So I cut off my bracelet, untied the cord, and then got under the van and tied up the muffler and made it home. So not really SHTF, but still pretty boss. So I hope you enjoyed this video. These are great. They make great gifts too. They're easy to make and they're really fun, and they also serve a functional survival purpose, right? They can be part of our EDC plan. A little bit of cordage never is a bad thing. As most of my commenters have said on my previous videos, they're like, why don't you carry some paracord? I usually do, but this is a really great way to do it, and it's kind of cool too. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to talking to you guys some more. Mike Tango Whiskey, all clear.